Yeah, my profession is into sustainability, which is of course a very vague term, but it's always about sustainable business.
When was your first time to come in Africa?
Oh my gosh,
specifically in Kenya?
Yeah, I have very good memories of that. I think I'm one of the very few people in this world who got lucky by the COVID pandemic.
Hello everyone, my name is Jos Reinhoudt. This is Made in African show that brings you true and original stories of Africans in a growing movement, highlighting the craftsmanship, creativity, and entrepreneurial spirit of African designers, artisans, and businesses.
Traffic is very different, yes. Well, in the Netherlands is a small country, right? And now cities are small, so everything is basically on cycling distance. So most people use their bicycle whenever they have to commute within a city.
So what is your preference transportation do you use normally here in Nairobi?
If possible, I walk. Not easy because plastic is super cheap. If it were expensive, people would take care, but it's cheap. You buy the water, but the plastic bottle itself is free.
In today's episode, we are with Mr. Jos Reinhoudt, currently lives and works in Kenya. His profession is into sustainable business. His memory to Kenya started back in 2020 when the COVID-19 pandemic impacted his trip to go back to his home country in the Netherlands. Mr. Jos believes that his experience can contribute to the sustainable development that Africa deserves.
To bring those big machines to help separate the waste, why do you think that is still an issue here in Africa?
Throwing away your waste on the streets is the cheapest option. It's a very complex question, so there's not just one solution. You buy a big machine and that's it. No, you need people to be willing to help.
Remember, Made in African show brings you weekly episode produced by NCB, the Base One TV.
Ladies and gentlemen, today with a very special guest. Welcome to Made in African podcast with our guest, Mr. Jos. Jos, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yes, thank you. So to start, who is Jos?
That's a good question. My name is Jos Reinhoudt. I am from the Netherlands. And the Netherlands, of course, is a beautiful country, but I really enjoy being here in Kenya. Not only because of the weather, it's cold in the Netherlands, but also because I like the people, I like the atmosphere. And especially in Nairobi, it has a very good vibe. So that's why I'm here. I work in the Netherlands, but I also do have some African projects here. I love doing them, so that's basically why I'm here.
Okay. So to make sure our listeners understand you, they know you deeper, beside you being you as what you have said, so what else should our listeners know about Jos?
What should they know? Well, my age is 58. I know it's your birthday, you're only 42, but I'm Z, as they say here, right?
Yeah.
I've got 2 children and a wife. They live in the Netherlands. My profession has always been into sustainability, sustainable business. I made a lot of new friends here in Kenya, and I like that. Yeah. So what else do you want to know?
So when was your first time to come in Africa?
Oh my gosh,
specifically in Kenya.
Yeah, I have very good memories of that. I think I'm one of the very few people in this world who got lucky by the COVID pandemic, because I arrived here in 2022 in February to do an assignment for like 3 months, but I had only been here like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then the COVID pandemic broke out. So basically all offices closed and I had to work from my apartment. I hated that a bit, but I managed to meet a lot of people anyway. After 3 months, I was supposed to go back to Europe, to the Netherlands, but by then there was no air traffic anymore, not at all. So I called my airline, and they said, "Yeah, maybe we'll go next week." Next week, of course, there was no plane at all. So I really got stuck in Nairobi. It was a very strange time because of the COVID pandemic, the curfew, the lockdowns. But I can still visualize myself maybe in May or so of that year, sitting on my sofa in my little apartment, and no one could tell me how long it would take before I would be able to get home and to see my family again. And so I made kind of a decision. If I do not know if I get back next week or next month or in 5 months or next year, it's better to become a Nairobian myself and try to really adapt to the food and the culture in Kenya, and become a Kenyan myself a little bit. I'm still struggling with my Swahili, but it was a kind of a mental decision I made somewhere 2020, and that's kind of a learning experience I've never had before. I felt at home in Nairobi.
Okay.
The city so far away from my own country.
Okay. So, generally, what is your professional?
Yeah, my profession is into sustainability, which is, of course, a very vague term, but it's always about sustainable business. In 2020, I came here to do a huge project on reforestation, but in the end, it didn't work out. It was supposed to start with a huge conference, but of course, there was no conference because of COVID. So we kind of immediately switched to the second option, which was a program about a research program about plastics. Around that time, the single-use plastic ban in Kenya became effective. So what we did was write a trend report about it. What are the trends? What's happening? And what does it mean to you as a business? How can you deal with packaging problems, for example, if single-use plastics are not allowed anymore? That was my first project.
Oh, that's very interesting. Actually, to really come to the project after. So far, what is your experience in Kenya? You mentioned you came here right before the COVID-19. You have been stuck during the lockdowns. So what's your experience now?
Now or then?
Currently now.
COVID pandemic is not here anymore, so we've move around freely. When I see Kenyans, when I see Nairobi, the main difference with the Netherlands is people are very young, for example. The average age in Kenya is 20, and in the Netherlands it's like 42 or so. So whenever you walk on the street, you see young people, many young people.
You mean in Kenya?
In Kenya,
okay.
Yes, very young people. Because of all those young people on the street, the vibe is very young. Also noted that very many Kenyans are very entrepreneurial. Always have a side hustle, even if they have a job. They will some sort of side hustle, trading stuff or growing food, or breeding chickens or whatever. So, and I really like that. That's what I see when I walk the street.
Back to the COVID-19 pandemic. You are a foreigner. You came to Kenya, and however, we'll be back to the experience of you, what your favorite food, the transportation, how you experience living in Kenya. So, but before we back to this question, during the COVID-19, it was a tough time. Everyone was scared. But for you, how did you get SIM card? Like communication. It took us the first day of the lockdown, and that week, the first 3 days, what happened?
The first few days were, of course, terrifying in a way because no one knew what would happen. I was watching television every day online, Dutch television, and the situation in Joburg was really very bad. So all hospitals were crowded. And, there was no vaccine yet. People were panicking almost, especially in Italy, but also in the Netherlands. So I was watching that on my TV in my apartment. In Nairobi or in Kenya in general, there were not that many casualties. I've never heard about hospitals in Kenya being crowded because of the COVID pandemic. So I felt safe. I felt safe, but I was worried about my family, my mother. Of course, she's 80 years old now. So I felt safe in Nairobi, and I felt sorry for my friends and family in the Netherlands. First, it came gradually, right? So the first, it's a pandemic, and then you look at TV and it's in Italy or in Spain, and then it reaches the Netherlands and Germany, and it took a few days, maybe weeks, I don't exactly remember, but I still felt safe in Nairobi. And then there was this
so how were you getting the food in your apartment?
I'm not a great cook, I must admit, but so I went out on the street, and just across the street from my apartment there was this little shop, selling pesa stuff, fruit, and a lady who sold fish. So I used to go there just to eat with them.
So you just go to eat that restaurant? Okay.
And also some of the restaurants were still open, but they closed early. They closed maybe at 7 or 8 o'clock or so. I remember there was this specific one in South B. It was in South B. Very, very small but nice restaurant. I went there often, and sometimes I was almost alone because of the pandemic. But I went there often. They had good food, reasonably priced, and I even remember I was somewhere else in the city, somewhere at a market, I believe, in the north of Nairobi. And then this owner, he called me, "Are you still coming for dinner tonight or not? Because if not, we will close down now." My relationship with that restaurant was really good. And of course, there's still fruit for sale.
Do you still go there currently to that restaurant?
No, I'm not in South B anymore. But,
Okay. So yeah, that is you in a pandemic, and the pandemic is done. Here we are today. You are telling us the experience of you. You mentioned you have a good relationship with the Kenyans. Let's see, go through your day. How is your day look like when you are in Nairobi?
Yeah. Well, currently I do have like 3 or 4 or 5 projects going on simultaneously. So my schedule is very tight. I wake up in the morning, I have my breakfast, sometimes I cook myself, sometimes I just take a pancake at the Java house or something like that. And then I be working from home behind my laptop on one of those projects. There are also many online meetings, phone calls going on. That is maybe half of my day will be like that. But I also try to go out. What's the use of being in Nairobi if you get stuck in your own apartment all day? So I also try to go out and meet people in their offices. So yesterday I went to Takataka Nimali, which is an NGO. They focus on recycling and circular economy, and we went to that specific place in their offices. So to meet and to have a conversation about our project. But I really like going there. I could have called, I could have been in an online meeting, but I tried to visit their offices, to feel the atmosphere, to have a better experience.
Yeah. Okay. So some people, when you go in a country and you are foreign, there is behaviors you can't tolerate. So which behaviors can't you tolerate in Nairobi that you look at it, you feel like this, I don't like this in Nairobi?
Yeah, well, I've been warned many times about Nairobi. They say, Nairobi is also called Nairobi. It's super dangerous, and you will get mugged and robbed every day. So many European people are very scared of Nairobi. They're afraid to walk on the street. But I must say, I've never had any bad experiences at all, except this little one thing that's really dangerous. It's the traffic. Traffic is disastrous in Nairobi. There's almost no room to walk. I'm used to separate cycling lanes in the Netherlands. I even used to have a bike when I lived in South B. But cycling in Nairobi it's life-threatening. So if anything could change, it would be the way the traffic behaves. People ignore red lights. If you're on foot, you're just being ignored by matatu drivers. So yeah, Nairobi is a dangerous place, not because of the people, but because of traffic.
So in terms of transportation, you mentioned the traffic in Nairobi. Before used to be known as Traffic City in East Africa, but later they have this expressway from the airport to Nairobi town, which they believe it's decreased some traffic. So you mentioned traffic. Is it traffic bad here in Kenya than your home?
Traffic is very different, yes. Well, in the Netherlands is a small country, right? And now cities are small. So everything is basically on cycling distance. So most people use their bicycle whenever they have to commute within a city. So that's really different than Nairobi. No one cycles here, almost no one. And cars are everywhere. So that's a dangerous part. And of course, there's a very well-organized matatu system, so you can get almost everywhere by matatu, cheap. I take Uber a lot, and also the Boda drivers, because they're a little bit more agile in traffic. If you're in a hurry, it's easier to be in a motorbike. But it's completely different than Europe, because in Europe everything would be regulated. People stop at a red light, even in the middle of the night, and there's no one that can stop. So there would be more room for cyclists and more room for bicycles.
Okay. So what is your preference transportation do you use normally here in Nairobi?
If possible, I walk. Sometimes that's not an option, of course, because of the distances, but I like to walk because you see more. I enjoy looking around me and then seeing those fruit stalls and the people. A lot is going on in Nairobi. It's a densely populated city, so if possible, I walk. If I need to go somewhere quickly and not far away, I'll take a Boda. I take Uber a lot because it takes me everywhere. And when I go to, for example, Ngong Hills, I like to hike there. I just take a matatu to go motorbike to the entrance of the national park.
Okay.
I do not drive myself. Also, the traffic is left here. As a driver, I'm used to on the right side of the road.
Okay, I see.
So it's especially roundabouts are challenging.
Yeah, around the boat here, the motor pass here, motor pass left, right. So yeah, so
good.
So let's back to your professional, especially sustainability. You mentioned the Nairobi is. This is a question I've been asking so many people. Do you think Nairobi is a sustainable city?
Not yet. No, it's not sustainable. Not. But there are no sustainable cities in the world, so that's nothing special. They're working hard on it, but there are some key issues that need to be addressed urgently. Traffic might be one of them because there's so many cars, but not only the amount of cars, but also the oil and the exhaust is black. So the quality of the air is really not healthy. So you cannot call that a sustainable solution for traffic or for commuting. Another thing that really needs improvement is waste management. On very few places and very few apartment blocks there are really good waste bins where you can separate your plastics from your paper, from your glass, from food, and that would be a big step ahead. I think if the waste management system would be in place. On the other hand, Kenya is doing relatively well on energy. The percentage of renewable energy in Kenya is way higher than it is in the Netherlands. I think the Netherlands could learn a lot from that experience. But there's so many companies and organizations and NGOs and even civilians working on becoming more sustainable every day as a consumer or in their businesses. So I have good hopes that in a few years from now the city will be cleaner, because sustainability is also about health. Having a good place to live and being able to afford basic stuff like healthcare and schools. That's also part of a sustainability program, right? So I have good hopes that Nairobi and other cities in the world will keep improving themselves.
So that's the part of the city. You're talking about the sustainability of the city. You mentioned transportation. You mentioned the crane. You mentioned a touch of what about the construction, the way the city is growing? Do you see sustainability in the way the city is shaped and is growing?
Nairobi is one of the cities in the world that's growing, one of the fastest growing cities in the world, right? So people need a place to live. So I do understand what's going on in the city, but on the other hand, for example, expressway, they cut down all the trees along Mombasa Road, which is really disappointing. It doesn't look beautiful. A tree looks beautiful, and an expressway is nice to have, but where are the trees? And if there are no trees, where are the birds and where are the insects? The natural environment has not become any better because of the expressway. People need a place to live, but I hope that the urban planning people will also keep some spaces to be green, and there should be parks. We're here in a beautiful green environment, and this feels good to people. Get happy when they are in a natural environment. So I really hope that even in Kilimani or in Umoja, there will still be a room for trees and plants and green. Just to keep it lively, to keep the oxygen flowing in those urban areas.
That is in terms of on the city. So have you been outside of Nairobi, of course, to see agriculture, people to see the outside? What is your point of view in terms of agriculture and sustainability in agriculture as well?
Yeah, the second year I came to Kenya in 2021. My assignment was to research sustainable agriculture, and so I had the opportunity to visit some farms. Well, agriculture is super important for the Kenyan economy, right? So I've met so many people, even in Nairobi, who have their own plot somewhere up country and grow their own food. And this small scale food production, I think, is a good and very sustainable way of living. On the other hand, people eat a lot of meat. Which is not considered to be very sustainable. Beef.
So you are saying in Kenya generally people they eat a lot of meat?
Yeah, well, maybe I should not say this because in the Netherlands the production of beef is so different. than it is in
But you are right. I live in Kenya too. I mean, Kenya is known by the nyama choma. The meat is is among the first eaten food in Kenya.
Yeah.
Talking to the agriculture in a rural area.
Yeah.
So you are saying your first year, the second year, you said?
The second year I was here in 2021.
Yes, you said you went in a village.
I was impressed by the innovation. I've seen black soldier flies farms, huge farms where they grow flies, black soldier flies, and they are a really cheap and efficient source of protein. They don't look tasty, but it's good protein, and they use the protein to feed fish or to feed other cattle. But you could also eat it. You could also use it for human consumption, like crickets. Another way to produce good protein. But also the small scale farming is it's beautiful because it's and the climate here allows it too. Because in the Netherlands, in Europe, we have a very different climate. We have 2 seasons. It's cold now in wintertime and it's warm It's not as warm as it is here, but it's warmer in summertime in July and August. So you have one harvest a year. But this climate here in East Africa, it allows you to grow beans continuously and bananas and so on. I've seen shambas, small farms, but they have everything. They have beans, they have maize, they've got fruits, everything. And it's a beautiful way to produce your food.
So you are saying sustainability in terms of agriculture in Kenya, it is not there, but it is... It's okay the way it
there,
is.
but I'm afraid that it will head into the direction that we did in the past few decades, past centuries in the Netherlands, which is super large scale industrial produced food. So if you cannot even go to a pig farm in the Netherlands because of all those restrictions and animal health and safety. So it's not a farm anymore. You're not a farmer. You have like an industry of pigs, thousands and thousands of them. There's nothing that reminds you of an animal life, a good life for an animal. It's just a production facility. So I'm afraid that because of international markets and money and huge investments from Europe or maybe from China, wherever, the African food production will also head into that industrialized way of producing. And that would be not a good idea, not for animal welfare, but also not for sustainability, because you need to bring food from all over the world. You will use a lot of water. So let's hope that Kenya will be able to maintain this, if you call it, old-fashioned way of producing food in small farms with mixed crops, with a lot of biodiversity. If the bananas fail one year, maybe you've got more beans. So this mixed agriculture. That would be a great way to produce food. But I do realize that not everyone in Nairobi has the opportunity to grow their own food. So there will always be trading. But the way food is produced is key to sustainability in general. The loss of biodiversity, for example, is 30% of the loss of biodiversity loss is related to food production. So all those species that are not there anymore, a great part of them got extinct because of the food we produce in a not sustainable way. So let's not go that way. Let's be very keen on preserving it.
Okay, so last year I was in a Youth Connect. There are so many young people, younger entrepreneurs, including farmers, and some of them they are bringing in their innovations. And of course also bringing some more challenges. Some of them, you ask them, they are trying to bring agriculture, they believe, to make agriculture more sustainable, to connect to the technology. So how do you think that can work in Africa?
I think that maybe it's at first sight it may seem like opposite things, right? Traditional agriculture versus new technology, but it could be really helpful because of satellite data. Where droughts are, and you know what to do. Maybe even per 1 square meter where diseases are. So satellite data, drones that you can use to really pinpoint diseases or opportunities, or you see where the water is too much or too little. So I know there's some entrepreneurs in Kenya providing real-time online data, plots of land. How the food is produced, and also about market developments, because you can, as a farmer, you cannot eat all your own food, so you have to sell. But if you have no information about market developments, you will not get the amount of money your trader will earn. So it's good to be online as a farmer and know what to do technically and also know what to do commercially. Yeah, so the connection between high tech and food production is really there.
Back to your professionalism still, you mentioned you have several projects you're working on in Kenya. Talking to sustainability, are some of your projects bringing solutions to sustainability in Kenya?
Yeah, well, I'm not the one bringing new technology from the Netherlands to Kenya, but I can help Kenyan companies. One of my clients is a very small engineering company. They have like 5 employees, and what they do, their niche is compressed air, compressors, which is a very technical thing. I don't know a lot about compressed air. They do, but what they're able to do is go to a factory and recalibrate all those machines, those compressed air tubes and compressors, and they know how to do it well, and it might save up to 30% of electricity. So this is very good for electricity use. It goes down, and when electricity use goes down, the emissions of carbon dioxide go down. And high tech in a very small niche in this industrial world, it's a sustainable solution. And what I can do is help them to improve their business by focusing on specific investments, or maybe they had a kind of idea to become a carbon credit trader as well, but I did not recommend that. It's not their niche. They don't know exactly how to do it, so it would cost a lot of time and investment to really get into that market. And they're not really good at it. They're good at compressed air. So we have discussions with the management, find other ways to grow, to innovate. Yeah, that's a very small and very sustainable engineering company.
Yeah. Before I think we move ahead, I believe there is a message you can send to younger farmers, and I know even some of them that is sending it to us, because many younger farmers, like for example, I met this one. He was having a fish project, and they was trying to find the solution, how to monitor their fish.
All right.
And talking how they're trying to also to make sure the water are clean.
Yeah.
How environment is impacting their fishing, because water goes to their dams, not clean. That can impact the production. So what message can you share to Kenyan farmers and African farmers in general in terms of sustainability?
Not just a message to farmers, but what you say is right. If you pollute your environment because there's no good way to dispose of your waste, it will end up in the environment, and the environment may seem to some people like something that's out of their lives, but pollution is still there. So the plastics end up in the water and on the land, in the soil. If it's in the soil and in the water, it will eventually end up in the food. And if it ends up in the food, it will end up in you. So I think farmers have a key role here. They should advocate for better waste systems to prevent their soils, their farms, from being polluted by other people, by plastic, by chemicals, by whatever. It's their soil. They need to be. I know one of my friends is a farmer. They love their soil. They know every square centimeter of their farm, and they should protect it and be clear about. I do not want your plastic pollution or your chemical pollution on my land. Put it somewhere else, so that it can be fixed. I hope the Kenyan farmers will be real advocates for sustainability, for waste management as well.
You mentioned the plastic. So plastic actually, not only in Kenya, where it came from in Rwanda, plastic is not a road. We had days and days to pick plastic all over the country. Like even the government brought like an order every Saturday, the last Saturday of the month, every season we go and pick the trash all over. So back to here in Kenya, where you mentioned you believe soon you may become a Kenyan by nationality. Who knows? So yes, do you still believe that Kenya, Nairobi itself as a growing city, they can have an alternative to avoid plastic?
Yes, of course, it is possible. It's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is possible and it must be done. You cannot just keep throwing away plastic in the river and in nature and expect it to not lead to big problems. It will lead. It has already led to problems. You even can see it yourself when we have this heavy rain showers like we had last week. You see all the gutters full of plastics, sewers getting clogged. It's not very hygienic. So that must be done. And one of my other projects is focused on separating waste at the source. So you take out the plastic, and the plastic, if the plastic is still, if it's clean and it's plastic only, not contaminated with other types of waste, you can reuse it, you can recycle it, and it's worth something. There are companies in Nairobi who are willing to pay for clean plastic. So it is viable to have a system in which plastic is not randomly disposed of somewhere, thrown out of your car, but it has value and it can be reused. It is possible. It's not easy because plastic is super cheap. If it were expensive, people would take care, but it's cheap. You buy a bottle of water. You buy the water, but the plastic bottle itself is free, and so you just throw it away. If you had to pay for the bottle, maybe a deposit, you would return it, and it would still have its value as a bottle or as a renewable plastic source of plastics. It's doable.
Okay, that's very interesting. That's very interesting input about what you have. I hope listeners, that's very interesting to think the possibility of plastic. But let's go inside of huge supermarket here in Kenya. Let's go inside the Carrefour. Carrefour has a lot of, I hope listeners, we can say in other supermarkets, we should, just, it's
Carrefour,
an example.
Naivas, they sell lots of plastic.
So if you go inside for one of those big supermarkets, you check their fridge. Do you think it's possible in terms of packaging that plastics can leave the market in Kenya? If you look at the packaging, the cheese, the meat,
almost everything is packed in plastics. Yes, you're right. Well, it is possible, and basically there, in all countries in the world, many countries in the world, and even so in Kenya, they have a new law. It's called EPR, Extended Producer Responsibility. It's an EPR scheme. So the producers of plastics, or the producers that use plastic to pack their products, like Coca-Cola, they use huge amounts of plastic. The extended producer responsibility means that Coca-Cola will stay responsible for their own products, including the plastic packaging, until the end of the supply chain. So even when you as a consumer buy your bottle, there is still some responsibility for Coca-Cola to fix this plastic problem. It's new. I think it's like 2 or 3 years ago that the EPR systems were implemented. And of course, not all companies really want to take their own responsibility in solving their own waste problem. It's easier to just pay a bit and let someone else solve the problem. But, if suppose it would be mandatory to have a 100 Kenyan shilling deposit for every PET bottle, I'm sure it would be recycled. Because it's worth something. And other types of plastics. Well, we have a system in the Netherlands. Every household has several bins, one for paper, one for electronic waste, one for food waste, and one for plastics and packaging material. So the packaging material is separated at the source, which makes it way easier to be recycled. And it's also a cultural thing, right? You don't, as a consumer in the Netherlands, you just don't throw your stuff out of your window on the street. You just don't. So people are very willing to cooperate in this recycling system.
So what's
it's doable. There are good examples in the world, not just in the Netherlands, but it is doable to get rid of 90% of the plastics.
You mentioned the area about the energy. Look, the energy in Kenya. How do you see sustainability in the energy here in Kenya? And according to your experience, do you see any improvement since you reach here for the first time?
Well, 4 years is a very short time to see real improvement, but Kenya is already doing very well when it comes to electricity. The major part of all electricity in Kenya is renewable, because solar and water energy. They're ahead of the Netherlands by far. So when it comes to electricity, I'm fully confident that that will become 100% renewable within, let's say, 1 decade or so. Because solar energy has become so cheap, and there's so much sunlight in Kenya, it would be stupid to invest in anything else than solar. Wind would be an alternative. But solar is everywhere, even in remote areas, up country. You can have your own solar panel and have electricity. But electricity is only a small part of energy use, right? So the bigger part would be oil and gas for cars, for example, for the industry. That's a lot harder to
get away from.
to get away from fossil fuels. Even in Europe, where money is hardly ever a problem for investments, it's the infrastructure, the market is so developed. Everything has been developed in the last 100 years around fossil fuels. So it's very hard to change that. It will take a lot of time, but it must be done. We must get rid of those fossil fuels if we are to prevent further global warming. So maybe cars, buses, public transport could be electrified in a few years. But there's still, I don't know, maybe 5 million cars or so in Nairobi fueled by petrol. So what do you do with them? You can't just switch overnight, make it mandatory to have an electric car. Just no one could afford it, and another thing. So what you need to have is a transition that takes maybe 10 or 15 or 20 years, and step by step change fossil economy towards a renewable one. It will take time. Some things will be easy because you can just buy an electric car. It's expensive, but it's technically not very difficult. If you have money, you can buy an electric car. Simple. But if you have a huge production facility producing, I don't know what.
Sorry to interrupt you. There was this talking across Africa that our engineer mechanics, they have been trained to repair these cars with gas and petrol. They are not familiar to electricity. What do you talk about that?
Yeah, it could be threatening if you have been in the petrol business for all your life. You don't want to hear stories like I'm telling now. You want to be in petrol because it's your job and you believe it's the best thing for the world. And even if you don't believe it, you're still stuck there because it's your job, it's your business. You make money out of it. Change is always difficult, and there's some real stress for individual people who are mechanical engineers and they know everything about a petrol engine, but they don't know what to do with an electric engine. So it could threaten your job, and you not forget about that. So there should always be an escape. Those people should be helped to find a new job, or maybe they need some extra training or whatever. So you cannot just leave it to them and hope everyone will be happy automatically. That's not the case. It's a struggle. It's a fight. And there are also companies, the big oil and gas companies in the world, they're fighting back. They want to protect their market. They want to sell plastics because plastics is also made out of fossil fuels. And it's lucrative. Those people are super rich. They're super wealthy. They're powerful. They can buy anything. They can even buy politicians. So it's a struggle and it will take time, but we need to do it. So,
yeah, that's very interesting because what Africa is struggling for now, it is sustainability. Every city, every country, every summit, the sustainability, the word sustainable, it's the what people want, they don't want to talk. And they also think you should bring to school, let younger people try to train about sustainability. So what do you think, I don't know if you have information, but the way Africans, like let's say here in Kenya, how people have been trained in sustainability, you talk about recycling, do you still think people understand sustainability generally in Africa? Let's say here in Kenya, when you see people, how do you think people, they understand sustainability, or do you think government or like NGOs working in sustainability, they really send a message to beneficiaries?
Yeah, Africans do understand sustainability very well, and especially when it comes to climate change. Africa is one of the continents that it's hit hardest by climate change. Even in Kenya, some parts are so hot and so dry now, cultures change by it. Even this year, we have had rains in January, and many people have told me, well, when my grandfather and when my father was young, it started to rain on 20th of February, not before that. There's never rain in January in Kenya. It's not supposed to be like that. But the climate is changing and will affect agriculture, so it will affect food, it will affect a lot of people individually. So yes, it's not very complicated to have a good conversation about sustainability and climate change with Kenyan people. They do understand. Yeah, and you ask about young people. Kenya is a young country. Most people are very well educated and very entrepreneurial, so I have good hopes. One of my smaller projects now it's called Bin It Right. Bin It Right. We try to teach children at primary schools to separate plastics at the source. So what we do is we put a huge plastic bin on the schoolyard with a sign on it, Bin It Right. This bin is for plastics only. There's an educational program around it. So children understand that they can take plastics from the street or they can take plastics from home, bring it to the school, put it in this special bin, and when it's full, a waste picker will bring it to a recycling company. The recycling company will pay for the plastics. The money goes to school use the money to green the schoolyard.
Another interesting question that we still ask, it's about sustainability as well, because dear listeners, Mr. Josh is, I'm not going to say an expert, but you have experience in sustainability. That's why sustainability, it's a very interesting, and every listener, I hope now you understand, when you, after finishing your water bottle, don't throw it away. Try to recycle, as Mr. Jos Reinhoudt.
Look for a plastic bin.
Yes.
To recycle it. Yeah.
So, yeah, why do you think in Africa, like especially in cities like here in Kenya, they still struggle with waste management? In other words, why there are no investors to bring those big machines to help separate the waste? Why do you think that is still an issue here in Africa?
Throwing away your waste on the streets is the cheapest option. So the big problem is always how to make money out of recycling, how to make money out of waste separation. And it's a very complex question. So there's not just one solution. You buy a big machine and that's it. No, you need people to be willing to help. Because if the machine is there, but people still throw them empty bottles in the bushes, in the river, it will not solve any problem at all. So there needs to be a mechanism. It's cultural, even it's financial and technological as well. But it's a huge system where you have to push like 100 buttons at the same time, and slowly we will get there. But we will not get there if not everyone wants to take their own responsibility. So even supermarkets, even Coca-Cola, but also you yourself as a consumer. You know, you can blame Coca-Cola, you can blame Naivas, but in the end, you're the one throwing your bottle. There's something in it for everyone.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So heading into our end of the podcast, I was very inspired, and I hope you, dear listeners, you're also inspired by Mr. Josh, who is from Netherlands, currently living in Kenya, has been having a good time in Kenya. We are talking with him about his experience and his business for him being in Kenya. That's a very interesting experience. So what's your favorite food here in Kenya?
Yeah, just before I came here, I had a chapati and beans and sukuma wiki. I really enjoy it. It's simple food. I know everyone eats it, but I like it. It's good. But the best food I've ever had, maybe in my life, is I went with my friend. She lives in the UK, but she's come from Kitale, from the west. We went to visit her grandmother, who lives not in Kitale, but in some remote area, like, I don't know, 50 kilometers away from there, in a very small compound. And of course, the grandmother is very old, so she saw her granddaughter. She hugged her and said, "It's good to see you again. Who are you again?" Because she's almost blind. She didn't really recognize. And she saw me, you know, a white man, Mzungu. But she was so welcoming and so friendly. And after hugging and shaking hands, she said, "Well, let me make some food for you." So she took some bananas, started to fry the bananas. She took chicken out of her garden and slaughtered it on the spot. And a few hours later, we were eating, how do you call it, kienyeji chicken, and it was amazing. It was so good. It's the food, but it's also the love that was in the food. I really enjoyed that.
Okay, so you are saying your favorite food, for the listeners who don't know what chapati is. Can you try to explain what is chapati to the listeners who don't know the chapati? Yeah, they know beans, but they don't know chapati.
Yeah, chapati is like a pancake, right? It's a bit smaller than the Dutch pancake. It's like, what is the size, maybe?
Yeah, the size of rounding.
It's like 15 or 20 centimeters in diameter. I think they're made of maize. I think there's different parts of different systems to make chapati brown and white. Yeah, they're usually quite heavy. Really, if you eat one, you already feel that you really have eaten something.
Made out of wheat flour or maize, like we mentioned.
Maize. I think it's maize, and they're usually warm. I like them best when they're still warm. And you can buy them anywhere on the street, right? And you can see how the ladies are making them.
Enjoying them when it's hot.
It's nice.
Yeah. So,
and ugali, I tried ugali, but the first time I had ugali, my gosh, I can't imagine people eating ugali. It's so heavy. It's like eating stones. I could only swallow a little bit of it, and I was full to the brim immediately. But later on, I got used to it. And I've heard that Kipchoge also eats ugali for breakfast and for lunch, and he's a very good athlete. So maybe try that more often.
That brings me to ask the question: the differences in terms of food. You think Kenyan food is heavy food than The Netherlands food?
Yeah, I think in general it's heavier. The ugali is heavy in your stomach. Chapati is also heavy. On the other hand, there's so much fruit, and fruit is light. I like fruits, bananas, mangoes, pineapple, whatever. And there's a lot of fruit for sale as well on the streets. And you cannot say that's heavy. No, it's a bit different than Dutch food, but it's always tasty. It's a bit more spicy than the European food in general.
So, Jos, what is the similarities you'd find in terms of intercultural exchange from Netherlands and Kenyans?
Yeah, the similarities between Kenya and the Netherlands. Well, the true similarity that there is, it's we're all people. People from the Netherlands, they're white skin and they dress differently. They have different food. They live in different houses. And Kenyans, they all look different. And but in the end, when you talk to them, they're all just people, ordinary, nice, friendly people. And that's similarity I really, really enjoy. So far away from home, and still nice people.
So what about the uniqueness? What is unique in Netherlands for Netherlands people and uniqueness in the Kenyan that you find this make us different?
That's a difficult question. The uniqueness. Well, one thing that I really enjoy watching is the hair of Kenyan lady. My gosh, it is so beautiful. It's sometimes it's so big. I'm almost bald, but Kenyan ladies, they stand out for their hair. I love it. I wish that we had that in the Netherlands, but we don't. So that's very unique about Kenya. Something I would like to see in the Netherlands too. Something very specific about the Netherlands. Well, the Netherlands is a cold country, right? At this moment in time, in January, it will be around 0 or maybe 5 degrees outside. So it's cold. So people are not going out a lot. They stay in their houses, which means that the inside of a house in the Netherlands is always very well suited to stay there, to have a good stay. So it's cozy. It's friendly. People love to stay at home. Where Kenyan apartments are usually a lot smaller and you can eat and sleep, but it's not the place to go. But maybe there's even a Dutch word. They say it's not translatable. Gezellig. It's called gezellig. It means something like cozy, homely. Well, I think that's typical for our Dutch culture.
Someone said, why do many people from Europe, they are much more loved to live in Kenya, especially Nairobi, than any other cities? Why do you think? I haven't done research, by the way. It's just a question.
I think it is true. Yeah, many people love to live in Kenya, at least part of the year, like me. I had this discussion with a friend, a Kenyan friend, and she said, well, people love Africa not because there are lions and giraffes and zebras here. Those are unique too. But when you go back to Europe, you will not say to your friends, I'm so happy because I saw a lion. No, you will tell them, I felt so happy in Nairobi because people were so friendly. So I think the open and friendly culture of Kenya is really attractive to the Netherlands. On the other way around, I have also met very many Kenyans who are looking for a job, for employment, and they want to go to Europe because of economic reasons. And I can understand that too, because life is expensive and salaries are not that high in Kenya. And in Europe, you get paid more for the same job. So I can really understand that many Kenyans would want to live in the Netherlands and many Dutch people want to live in Kenya.
So it's a one, yeah, okay.
So an exchange program.
So it's an exchange. Now we change the program.
Because the European economy is super strong. There's so much money around, and there's so many jobs, and you get paid relatively well. Not that there's no poverty in Europe. There is, but it's not like in Kenya where many people struggle to survive. There's hand-to-mouth jobs. They wake up broke. They work, they eat, and when they go to bed, they broke again, and they start all over again.
Yeah.
So that's not the case in the.
It's a white and the black, good and bad.
And it brings a lot of insecurities and stress. So I really hope the economic development in Kenya will speed up. That it will be fair. So that not only very few people get very rich and the rest of Kenyans will remain very poor. That's not the way to go. This economy will be sustainable. Renewable energy. Do not make the same mistakes as Europe made and end up with a fossil economy that's almost impossible to change. You must do it. Yeah.
So listeners, when I say black and white, based on what Josh said, African, sometime you get up in the morning, you have a 10,000. That is a white day for you. It's a very good day. Then after 2 days, the money is done. You are broke. That is black day. Is Nairobi expensive to to you?
Well, I've seen prices gone up in only a few years. So when I came here in 2020, life would be a lot cheaper than it is now. That's true.
I'm
Prices
talking in
have-
terms of other cities like you have been. Is Nairobi, because some people they will tell you Nairobi is expensive. So is Nairobi expensive to you?
Is Nairobi expensive? It's a good question. Well, if you want to spend money in Nairobi, it's easy. There are very posh restaurants, and you can spend a lot of money on basic stuff. If you live like that, it's very expensive. I know prices even in supermarkets have gone up a lot. But before I came here, I had to eat something, and I had chapati and beans. I had a good meal for 100 bob. That's not expensive. I think it's good food for a little money. Compared to the Netherlands, Nairobi is cheap, except for like a beer. It's the same price in the Netherlands as it is in Kenya.
Mm-hmm.
Is it cheap?
Yeah.
Because the prices have gone up, but the exchange rate euro to shilling also changed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So my euro is worth a lot more shillings than it was last year, 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's easier than for Kenyans who get paid in shillings.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. So to conclude, thank you very much, Josh, for your time. Always we ask our guests to send a message to people, particularly people who were in the same career as you. I wish to ask you to send a message to people, Africans in general, but people who work in a sustainable institution, people who have a mission to make Africa more sustainable.
Yeah.
So what's the message can you send to Africans in general about sustainability and sustainable?
My message would be never give up. It will be a tough fight to become more sustainable as an economy, as a country, as the continent, but it needs to be done. So keep up the good work. Don't stop. Don't let anyone or anything stop you, and just push it. I'll be there to help you if you need me, but I know Africa is a strong continent. Kenya and Nairobi especially. Strong people, they will be able to do it. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm. So, and I'm sure some listeners there now have a question. Where can we find Josh related to your business? So do you have social media? People can find your website?
The easiest way would be via LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Jos Reinhoudt. That's a difficult name to pronounce for Kenyans.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can have it on your website and spell my name.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
So
the easiest way is to contact me via LinkedIn, and my business name in Kenya is Akili Green. Akili Green. Yeah, it's a literal translation of my Dutch business name.
Okay.
Akili Green.
Josh, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate. Thank you for being in Made the African show, and feel like the home Africa is your home now. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to be here.
I appreciate.
And I wish your listeners and you all the best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening our episode. See you next time with your host Celestina Wirema.